you wouldn't be able to, even if you went into a banking hub. Some of these problems that people have, you couldn't sort them out there.
No, not unless a representative from your bank was in that banking hub.
Okay, so you'd have to wait for that day. Right, well, let's talk about these banking hubs now. We heard about the one in Knaresborough, and on a different day, a different big bank comes in. You'd have to know that day. So you, James, were part of the team that reported on access to cash across the UK, weren't you? That was in 2019. And you called on government and regulators to guarantee that everyone who wants access to cash will get it. These banking hubs, the promise is that there will be 117 of them. How much progress then has been made? Only 37 of them so far. People say that's slow progress. The banks are dragging their heels.
Well, quite a lot's been happening in the last few years. Even legislation to protect access to cash is being laid. And in the meantime, the banks have come up with a voluntary solution. So every time a bank or a banking service is removed from town, Link, that runs the cash machine network, has to come in, assess cash needs of that community, and can commission new services. That won't always be a banking hub. It might be ensuring that there is cashback available from all the shops in town. It might be ensuring a new deposit machine for businesses is put into another community building. But we are now moving to a world where banks can't just up sticks, leave town and leave the community to deal with the consequences. There is legislation in place and new regulations following.
But the horse has bolted, hasn't it? People listening will feel, that person's saying to Kevin, we've just got used to being put upon. It's already happening. It's happened. They have to.
I think a lot of people don't realise that there's a lot they can do in their post office, and I think more people are doing more there. But you're absolutely right. There are gaps, and I think there is pressure both from government, from the FCA, to try and sort this out as an industry. And I think the wheels are in motion to get to a much better place. And already, as I say, if a bank leaves town, they do now already have to start the process for a replacement of services and a review of what's needed there.
James Daly from Fairer Finance, thank you. An email just come in, a text. This is so timely, this discussion. I have literally just put the phone down to my mum. She's 84 and in tears. She went to her local branch last week and transferred £400 to her current account from her savings account. She gets a statement on her phone every Wednesday morning so she can see the money has gone from one account. It hadn't arrived from the savings to the current, and she doesn't know what to do. Her bank closed its doors yesterday. She doesn't bank online. She's so upset she could barely speak to me. I'm 200 miles away. I feel utterly disgusted. 1 in 5 people taking their driving test now wants an automatic only licence. Now that used to be 1 in 20 people only 10 years ago. Part of the thinking is that automatic cars are the future. Most new cars on sale are automatics now, and all electric cars are. Electric cars don't need gears to transfer power from the engine to the wheels. Another factor though is that an automatic is easier to drive. We spoke to some drivers in West Yorkshire and Manchester about that.
I actually started off in manual and moved to automatic pretty quickly for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I could just not handle clutch control. I kept slipping back into third gear instead of first gear, and it kept making me stress out. And then on top of that, I also burnt my driving instructor's clutch out, so it was a mutual decision for us to go into automatic.
I'm currently learning automatic. I did try manual. I tried it for like a year. Probably wasted so much money on it to the point where my driving instructor said, I think it'd be better if you switch over. It is so much easier to concentrate on the road, because I couldn't concentrate on changing the gears, doing the clutch and watching the road at the same time, which is really bad. So I would say if you're struggling, definitely go to automatic. It's so much easier, calmer, and will help you feel more confident on the roads.
It may be easier, but some people believe that mastering the gears is an important skill and that makes you a better driver.
Although I do drive an automatic car now, I do think I'd probably still do the manual test, just so you have that option to be able to do both.
Manual driving and sort of riding the clutch and all that kind of stuff it's a skill. So generally speaking, I felt like less confident drivers would be getting automatic driving tests.
I passed my test in 1984, which is 40 years ago. I passed manually, and I think everybody should have to do a test manually, because what happens if you have to go to a company and you have to drive a company car and you have only got an automatic test and the company vehicle is manual. What do you do then?
So what should you bear in mind then if you're going to learn to drive or if you're helping pay for someone else to learn to drive? Stuart Masson is the editor of Car Expert. Stuart, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Winifred. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
So, let's start with the basics then. Everyone learning is desperate to pass. Are you more likely to pass your test if you only want to drive an automatic?
I don't think it's a question of whether you're more likely to. It's a question of what works for you as a learner driver. So
no, but there are some figures, aren't there, that I know you know.
Yeah, look, it's certainly a growing case, and there are certainly more people who are feeling more comfortable driving in an automatic car, and therefore they're more likely to be a safer driver. They're more likely to be a better driver.
Forgive me, because I've read the briefing notes.
Sure.
I think there's a 57% pass rate if you're doing it with a manual gearbox, and only 52% if you're doing it with an automatic.
I suspect there's probably reasons behind that, and as you heard from one of those drivers, was a not confident driver, struggled as it is. So I think that in those circumstances, but overall, I mean, driving a manual it is a skill, as someone said earlier. If you can learn to drive a manual and pass your test, you are going to be better off, and you can then drive any car.
So the other thing is that insurers seem to price in this idea that it's the people who are, struggling with the driving anyway, who give up on the gearbox and go to automatic only. So those are the people who might be likely to have more accidents, and they definitely ramp up the price. If you are young, you've just passed and you can only drive an automatic. So
yeah,
again,
I mean, young drivers get hit over the head with car insurance anyway, and it's one of the big problems we have, that the people who are least likely to be able to afford insurance tend to have to pay the most. In terms of the data about why they're charging people with automatic licenses more in terms of insurance, they're going to be basing that on the data that they're getting from accidents and incidents involving those drivers. In theory, there shouldn't be any reason. If you've got an automatic only license, you're only going to be driving an automatic car, so you're still driving a car that you are licensed for. So it's unfortunate that they are being penalised even more as young drivers if they've only got an automatic licence.
I guess automatics tend to be more expensive, don't they? Maybe it's that. Who knows? Anyway,
they certainly have been. I mean, we're seeing fewer and fewer cars available with manual gearboxes now. I mean, Volkswagen recently announced that the Golf, which is one of the most famous cars in the world, is no longer available with a manual gearbox. It's auto only.
So what do you think then? In time we'll all be driving and the manual thing will just be a specialist skill? We'll all be driving automatics?
It will, largely, because there will be, probably by the end of this decade, very, very few cars available with manual gearboxes, because if you drive a hybrid or you drive an electric car, they're automatic only. It's only sort of traditional petrol or diesel cars, non-hybrid cars, that are available with a manual gearbox. We know they're being phased out, so it's only going to be drivers who are going to be driving older cars that are going to even need a manual gearbox in the future.
Stuart Masson, editor of The Car Expert, thank you for coming on. Now, a couple of weeks ago on our Tuesday phone-in, we were talking about probate, and we had a listener contact us, worried about what might happen when her husband dies. We couldn't get her on the programme because it was too late, but I did read out a message that she sent us. He has advanced dementia and there is no will. So we talked about her message briefly on the programme last Tuesday, but a couple of Tuesdays ago. But we thought it'd be good to look into her problem in a bit more detail and get some detailed advice on what anyone should do in that situation. Stephanie Parrish is a lawyer with the firm Clary, and she specialises in wills and inheritance. And we can get our listener on today, Elizabeth. She is on the line. Elizabeth and her husband live in Chester. Elizabeth, so thanks for getting in touch with us in the first place, and thanks for agreeing to come on today. Tell us a bit about your husband before he had dementia and now.
Well, at the moment he's in the end of life stage of vascular dementia.
I'm sorry.
So he doesn't have a will, and my concern is, what are the implications for me with regard to that?
Why is there no will, Elizabeth?
It was lost.
Gosh, you lost it.
Solicitor.
And you and your husband didn't keep a copy?
No.
So what your husband will leave, his estate, is it complicated?
Well, this is it. I don't know, what is the definition of complicated. We have 2 adult children who have families of their own.
And what do you have to leave? A lot of property, or?
Well, this is it. There are 2 properties. I'm just, my concern that it's going to be a more complicated process due to not having a will.
Okay.
I mean, he had initially made a will in my favour, to keep things simple.
And what you own, your property?